Hello, lacrosse friends. Welcome once again to Inside the World of Box Lacrosse. Greg Beecher is here with Blue Squatch Productions. He's in the background. He might pop up down at the bottom once in a while if he has something to ask. And Adam Levy is in New York. I am in Marmora, Ontario. You have to look it up. I can explain to you where it is, but it probably won't help you much. Halfway between Toronto and Ottawa. How's that? And we are live on ITWOBL on Blue Squatch YouTube. And we are very excited to be back. And we're going to talk about the games from last week. And Adam, what do you think? What jumps out to you about these? What game did you love?
Well, I have to say I loved being in Philadelphia
Yeah.
for that Halifax versus Philly game. Obviously not the result that Philly fans wanted, but Halifax is really turned things around. It's been incredible to see really from the back from Warren Hill and his improved efforts to Graham Hossack and Ryan Terefenko, even guys who don't get enough credit like Trevor Smith and others. It's been an impressive effort from them, but Calgary, I think, is the continued story to say, wow, this team is really improve or performing above expectations, I should say. And it's really, I don't think we're giving Josh Sanderson enough credit and that whole coaching staff, including the veterans on that team for bringing everyone together. So I'd say my most impressed result would be the Calgary going into Vancouver, winning by 3, scoring 15 goals.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we knew they'd score, right? They've got Dixon and Dobie, and they can still score. I mean, they're among the leading scorers in league history and among the leading scorers in the league this year. I think the goaltending obviously was the big question, and Josh Sanderson addressed that. I know when we were calling the game before the Calgary-Ottawa game, when we had our calls before, he said, hey, with the Del Bianco situation, you deal with it, and we're going with Cam McLeod. He's our guy, and they believe in him, and he's played very well for them.
Yep.
The last couple of weeks, he wasn't great early, but
Yep.
I mean, this is a guy who barely played in the league, right? It takes some adjusting. It's a hard league to play in. It's hard to stop these guys from scoring. So I think kudos to him for sure. He deserves a lot of credit for basically making us all look not dumb, but I mean, I flat out said before the season, hey, I don't know if you can go into a season with Cam McLeod and Colby Bowman as your two goalies, never having won a game in the league, barely having played even in the league, and expect to be competitive. And they've been competitive and beyond. So yeah, good for them.
Yeah, I ask you one question. Obviously, you mentioned Curtis Dixon and Dane Dobie. I mean, obviously, we know what they've been capable of throughout their careers, but I don't think, and I think that if you ask them honestly, that if you had said, "Hey, Curtis, do you think at 36 years old you're going to be on pace for 54 goals this season?" I know that he's a proud guy, but I'm not sure he would have said, "Yeah, I would have suspected that." Dane Dobie on pace for 51, I believe. So it's really been impressive, their rejuvenation, because it did seem in San Diego like things were on the downslope, especially last year.
Yeah, I mean, Dixon was hurt a bit last year and still played pretty well, but he's looking great this year. I think he looks awesome. I mean, he's looking like Curtis Dixon, which is pretty cool for a 36-year-old, as you said. Dobie was really slowing down last year. You can see in the scoring. I mean, I know he's on pace for 51 this year. He had 8 goals in one game.
Yeah,
probably should have been 6, right? Because he was way early, and the other one should have been waved off, and they would have never gone to overtime. But whatever, he had 8 goals, very impressive. So. But he's slowed down lately for sure. He did miss a game with injury, so I don't see him getting to 51. Dixon is phenomenal. I mean, and the two of them together, like they've been playing together so long. They're good buddies. They just work together so well. And then you have Jesse King playing his role there, and Tyler Pace, and you throw all those guys in, and then Hayden Dixon throws in a hat trick, and there's a lot of talent on that offense. I mean, Braden Maillet, the rookie, and Matt Gauthier, they have to battle for playing time, those two, and they're both really good additions. And Tanner Cook, didn't mention Tanner Cook, who is one of the linchpins to the whole thing. So yeah,
I had asked Graham Perro of NLLstats.com, because obviously we've seen Dixon and Dobie play together for over a decade now, and that includes their time in San Diego. And aside from Steve Priolo and Dane Smith, Dane Dobie and Curtis Dixon have played the most games as a current duo or actually, I believe it was even a duo since 2005, since we can go back, and they played like
Wow.
205 games together.
Wow.
So yeah, I think at some point, it's just like it becomes innate. You're just like, that guy's I know where he's going to be. Like we get each other, and you do see that, which is incredible.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned some of the defenders in Halifax and saying guys like Trevor Smith that aren't necessarily don't get enough credit. Trevor Smith's really good. I think he's always been really good. But Calgary, same thing. I mean, obviously Eli Salama and some of their top guys, fantastic. But I think guys like Bennett Smith, the youngster, has been outstanding for them. Um, there are some guys making plays there that are just they're just really, you can see them maturing, the younger guys that they've been going with, and I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it's been great. And I have to say, looking around at some of these other results, I mean, San Diego, while we've talked about their roster and how capable they are, I mean, how important was that win for them to pull that off? They would have been in a really bad spot had they not taken down Toronto. So huge win for them. That was really important for them. And I think that, especially heading now into back-to-back games against
Yeah.
Buffalo, including going into Buffalo, which, by the way, San Diego not only has not ever beaten Buffalo in Buffalo, they've never actually beaten Buffalo, period,
Wow.
in the time that they've been playing each other. So important to get that Toronto win is an understatement.
And that was two teams that everyone thought was going to be up among the league leaders like they were last year, who both went in at 3-5, which is wild. And I think you're pointing out how important it was to San Diego. I think you hit it. The two games back to back with Buffalo are such a big reason why. Because you lose that game to Toronto, you're looking at a potential 6-game losing streak. Because Buffalo's tough to beat. I don't know. Can San Diego win one of them? Yes, but will they? Who knows? Buffalo's been tough to beat. Toronto also plays Buffalo coming up, so that's an interesting one. I want to look at a couple of highlights. One is from the Toronto game. Yes, and this one we're going to start with Marcus Claridge, number 14 here on the bottom part of your screen. And this dunk goal, I'll say flat out, I'm not a huge fan of the dunk goals, but I love what they do here. I mean, it's part of the rules. Look at this move to get Salama moving and then reaching back to the far side of the net, going across to the other side. We saw the one last week where I forget who it was, came back and went 5-hole on Nick Rose, I believe. And look at that shot. Just so you can see the ball, perfect pausing there, Greg, where you see the ball going in over on that far post. Goalies, they've learned how to deal with this, and they're getting high and over to the post because that's where guys try to go. And Claridge somehow gets it over to the far side, and we're going to see another one, Adam, after this. It's almost the same goal.
Yeah, it's a great effort, and by the way, great footwork. Look at how the plant and the extension there, unbelievable. What an effort! That's another great pause by Greg. I mean, that is literally a Superman-esque extension there. What an athletic effort! Really impressive, Dylan Watson, and that's good to see for Watson, considering that we kind of last year saw him start to break out a little bit with Las Vegas. Then wasn't really developing, wasn't getting those opportunities as much this season. So for him to get that goal and to be building some confidence in San Diego, I think is really key for him.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's his first goal with them, right? Because he got one with Vegas this year, didn't he? So that's his first goal. So. Love the shot of Mike Poulin with just the flecks of gray doing the elder statesman thing. He's looking really good. Mike Poulin, one of the nicest people you will meet. I know we say that a lot about players. Man, he is unbelievable, great guy, and such a great presence for them. I mean, when he has to go in and play, he can still play. But he's there as a mentor as well for Chris Riglieri, which is working out great for them. So,
and talk about smart guys. Isn't he like a biomechanical engineer or something crazy? Like he's an incredibly smart guy. I remember watching one of the NLL videos with him, and they talked about what he did. He's like he's incredibly smart.
Yeah, I actually don't know what he does.
Yeah, I actually don't either. But I will say that despite any bits of graying, still an incredible hairline. Good for
my goodness. Yeah. And the jawline. I mean, come on. I'll tell you, one of my favorite Mike Poulin stories was he was playing for Kitchener in major series, Kitchener Waterloo Kodiaks back before they moved to Coburg. And they're playing in Peterborough. Mm-hmm. And it's a really close game. This is when Peterborough was, winning a bunch of Mann Cups and, constantly at the top of the league. Kitchener was trying to make the playoffs. Good young team, but hard to compete with some of the top teams. And he has one play where he picks up a loose ball, a rebound, whatever, picks it up, goes to throw it, ball rolls at the back of his stick and into the net. And you're like, oh, you feel for him. And Peterborough winds up winning that game like 11-10 or 12-11 by one goal. And I talked to Pooley after in the down by the change room. I said, I felt for you, man. Like how do you deal with that? That's got to be frustrating. He's like, yeah, it happens. You just hope it's not a 1-goal game.
Yeah.
Like he was just like, yeah, what are you gonna do? But he kind of made a bit of a joke of it. And like, what are you gonna do? He's a great goalie. He was the league's MVP that season. I think, or one season was the MSL MVP. He was a goalie of the year in the NLL. Things happen to even the best of us.
Yeah, 100%. I actually was just talking about this with somebody yesterday. I'm forgetting who it was, but even and maybe we haven't really been fair enough on Cam McLeod and what his potential is. We were just talking about him in regards as you look at a guy like Matt Vince and his first 3 real full seasons in the league where he was playing 700, 800, 900 minutes. His save percentage was about 75% on average. His goals against average was like 13. Like sometimes it takes some time, and I think that going through some trials and tribulations, figuring it out, learning it, and also we don't give enough credit to how these guys mentally prepare, because that is so common where you talk to guys, and I know I would be distraught. I think you would agree that if you get a tough loss, you'd be like, man, that sucks. But these guys, they're just like, I'll get the next one. And it's just like, how do you do that?
Thomas Kajzek was great for that, right? His first start was Saskatchewan. He gives up 4 goals in the first 5 minutes. Didn't look good at all. And you're thinking, oh my goodness. And it's kind of like Christian Del Bianco's first start for Calgary when he got pulled because he gave up 7 or 8 goals. He wasn't good. I mean, they were hitting perfect shots. He just didn't have a good game. Zach Higgins went in, had a fantastic game. But, Kajzek, they couldn't pull him. They had a defender as the backup goalie because Frank Chiliano was off for the birth of his child. So, he was in there. He had to go, and he just dealt with it. He's 20 years old and did that. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I do just want to plug the Lacrosse Matrix podcast. I have a great episode out diving into the history books with Neil Doddridge that just got released yesterday. However, my next episode coming out today is actually with Del Bianco. And we had a very candid conversation about the past, the present, and the future. So Lacrosse Matrix podcast, Lacrosse Culture Daily, and Spotify, go check that out. It'll be a great episode that you won't want to miss. He was very open, and it's going to be interesting to see how that situation unfolds.
So one, can you tag me when the Del Bianco one comes out?
Sure.
Or send me a text? That'd be great. Can't wait to see it or hear it. And 2, did you have to have a 7-second delay on Neil Doddridge?
I did not, but I mean, I think with Neil, it worked really great. I mean, he and I have known each other now for years, and it was a great conversation back and forth. And he was so open and going through his history. You might know this really well, Stamper. I was trying to think, and I know that NLL stats doesn't go back before 2005, but Neil's got to be one of the few guys in NLL history who has played with Paul and Gary Gate as well as John Tavares.
Yeah, and for quite a bit, right? He was in Baltimore with the Gates, right? And then with the Baltimore Thunder, and then he was with obviously Tavares in Buffalo, and when they won,
also played with them, the Washington Power later, Pittsburgh with I think Paul, and then Syracuse with Gary.
Dodds is an all-time beauty. He'd be great.
He's incredible.
But I remember him telling me, like, he said, he loved it when he was with the Gates. He said his role was just to take care of them, make sure nobody was abusing them. And he's like, I didn't have to score. I didn't have to do anything. I just go. And he's like, I go take penalties. Didn't matter. We'd score shorthanded. You could take all the penalties I wanted. He's hilarious. He was, he played the game with heart. So we're going to go take a look now. This is, what's this one?
This is
watch! Oh my goodness! Oh, come
this
on!
Was unbelievable. I mean, this guy is next level. And I think that when we looked at him, he's got the body and the physicality for it. I think we were just wondering because he hadn't played so much box at this level. How is he going to manage that? How is he going to deal with it? Well, he's playing like a man out there, and really, It's incredibly impressive. I did have to do my signature Levi lens zoom in for this goal because it was so close to being a no goal. Although I would say that's one of the instances where if I'm the ref and I'm reviewing that, I'd say, you know what, we'll give him that one because that was just too good to pass up on.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing, I remember watching Brendan O'Neill's high school field highlights and thinking, this kid's going to be a really good box player because he'd go inside. He was fearless. He didn't do a lot of hand switching. He tended to just do more face dodging and he would go down the middle and his shooting, his side, like, you just look at it and say, wow, this kid's going to have it. And, then you realize he did obviously play box before. He played in Connecticut. He played some, back with the Blue Star or whoever it was that he played with. And, what a goal. I mean, unbelievable. And then he lands on his back and it's, he just pops up. Remarkable. This might be one of the plays of the weekend from a Philadelphia athlete.
Yeah.
Goes Cooper DeJean would be up there and everything Josh Sweat did, the pass from Jalen Hurst, but he put this in that list with those amazing plays.
Yeah, and I think that's enough of praising of Philadelphia for now, at least from the Eagles' standpoint.
Yes.
As a New Yorker, I need to keep that in check. I need to keep the ego of Philadelphia low. But Brendan O'Neill, unbelievable.
Yeah.
I know another guy in Philly who stood out in his debut this weekend was Michael Sowers. What did you think of his debut?
So he's so quick. He is super quick. I think one thing you saw it, and I know people are like, oh, he's got to stay in the lineup. I'm like, I'll tell you one thing. The defense was adjusting to what he was doing, and you have to see that kind of speed. He might be the quickest guy in the league at this point with the jab and the movement, the lateral movement. So they were adjusting. Get that step early. He's going to have to readjust. How does that go? Because I thought they got more effective at containing him as it went. He still made some great plays. He's still going to be an effective player. I think. I don't think it's a lock that he's a star at this point. I think, defenses are going to adjust and he'll have to counter adjust. I'll tell you one thing. I want to go on a little rant if I can. So
you're literally one of the important people of this show. You can do whatever you want.
Thanks. I'm right up in the top 3, right? So there's the play, and I asked Greg for this clip way too late, like 5 minutes before we went on air. So we don't have the clip, but there's a hit. Carter McKenzie comes across and hits Sowers after he takes a shot, knocks him flat, and then Tanner Pearson and Sowers are kind of tangled up. Pearson lands on top of him. McKenzie's given a major for illegal body check. They review it and they reduce it to a minor. And I don't want to call people out too much, but the announcers are saying, it's a major. And like Scott Gabrielson, who does a nice job, he played in the league, he knows what he's talking about, but he says, so even though they're going high, it's a minor. They'll only serve 2 minutes. And I'm like, watch the replay. It's not high. There's a reason why that was reduced to minor. It was a great check to the body by a big guy on a little guy.
Yeah. And
McKenzie did a great job of not coming up to the head. He hit him right in the chest, flattened him. If the minor, I think, is not for the hit itself, it's because it was late. Mm-hmm. Right. I think it was a step or so late.
Yeah. I would also say that, if you look at the entire situation, you mentioned it was compounded. Things look worse when there is extra curriculars with it, when a guy is falling on after the hit. When you put it all together, especially if you're, supporting or rooting for that team, it looks much worse than it is. But I think, if you isolate it just with the hit on itself, I would agree.
Yeah. And in the ref's defense, he wasn't looking right at that because there's the shot. He actually follows. You can watch the play. He follows the shot. He's following the play. And then he looks back and there's Michael Sowers on the turf. Johnny Pearson has landed on him. Pearson maybe could have avoided it, but they got tangled up. He fell on him. But he just sees huge Carter McKenzie and little Mikey Sowers on the, I know I had to say it, on the turf. And then he watches the replay and says, "Oh, that's a pretty good hit, but it's just hit. It's not play. We'll give him the minor." So I think I like this. Majors are reviewed and can be reduced because I think it helps them get it right. I think you do see more majors called because of it because they know they can change it. But it drives me nuts when people we've seen it so many times this year. People are like, "Oh, how do you take that down as a major?" I think the Jeremy Thompson one. I have so much respect for Graham Parrow and what he does, all the stuff he does. But he said something in one of his columns about the inexplicable reduction of the major to a minor for Jeremy Thompson. He cross-checked David Brock in the chest, and Brock's stick hit him in the face. I'm not saying did Brock embellish? Probably a bit. Did he actually get hit and hurt? Yeah, I mean, his stick hit him in the face, but it was his stick because Jeremy Thompson cross-checked him properly. I don't think Thompson deserved a penalty at all for that. He did deserve a penalty for grabbing him by the face mask. I know I've gone on about this before, but it's a tough game. It needs to be a physical game, right?
Yep.
So
yeah. I mean, I think that the league is very much at a place, and I know that the head of the referees, Don Kaharski, he had some things he wanted to implement in terms of cutting back on certain things, and I think it has been an adjustment that we're seeing unfold before our eyes, which can be very difficult, in terms of how you're going to police things, how you're going to deal with things, also from a league perspective of how physical are we going to allow play to be? I think that goes back again to the fighting conversation. Are we going to promote it as a thing? Or are we not going to promote it as a thing? Also, just as a side note to that, I was on the NLL's YouTube page, and I want to say like 80% of their top 30 videos were fight videos. So, take that if you will. But, I think that there is kind of this right before our eyes is understanding of how they want to establish things for the long term.
We're going to go on to our last highlight, which I think is a beauty. But first, to me, the thing is, it's working. I think the majors being able to be reduced to minors, the review, it's all working. So let's not spread the narrative that these shouldn't be reduced. So here is a play. First of all, speaking of big hits, I'm glad that Greg clipped this a little before I asked him to, because that's a great hit by Damon Edwards. Now, it does knock the helmet off. Guys have to buckle up their chin straps. That's, to me, like if your helmet comes off, that's largely on you. Edwards does kind of launch himself a bit, but look at Robert Hope. He takes this shot. That's not his forte, shooting.
Right.
But he goes and gets this loose ball, protects it. Look how well he protects this. They're desperate to get after that ball, right?
Yep.
And he comes out, and he usually does this in his own end. He's so adept at this, at getting the ball, protecting it without making a big deal of it, and then finding his outlet. And here he reaches up to make this pass out. And Colorado, this is such a game-changing moment. And it's such a little thing that you could easily miss. By the way, when I say his forte is not shooting, I had a chance to play with Robert Hope in a charity game, and he's a very skilled lacrosse player. He's just not, when you put him up against the Ryan Lees of the world, he's going to look like he's not going to look that great, but he's a very skilled player.
Yeah, I mean, but this is, the Robert Hope that Pat Coyle and the rest of the coaching staff that they know and they believe in and see every single day. I mean, whenever you talk about the Mammoth success and then you say, hey, why is this happening? What is this going? He goes, well, I can't say enough about Robert Hope. I can't talk enough about his leadership, about the way that he composes himself in key situations. I mean, he is the captain for a reason. He is a great leader, a great communicator, a smart player out there. And as you just expertly outlined, that was an example of, he took a risk. Yep, he took a risk with that shot, but made things work, and it paid off for the Mammoth in the end.
We're going to be back with more ITWOBL. We're going to look at some Canadians in the NCAA, right?
Yep.
Yes. And we will have our predictions where we can once again show that we actually don't know what the heck we're talking about when it comes to what's going to happen in the NLL. I am Stephen Stamp with Greg Beecher and Adam Levy, and we'll be back with more ITWOBL after this quick break.
Welcome back to Inside the World of Box Lacrosse. Adam Levy, Steven Stamp, Greg Beecher in the background there. We are back with another segment of box players in the NCAA playing this NCAA season. These are going to be future NLLers, a lot of these guys, and Stamper being one of the leading draft experts for the NLL. He is the guy that you want to hear from when looking at some of these young and upcoming talents. I've been trying my best to dive into the field game and get interested in some of these guys that are up and coming, because there are so many more Canadians who are playing the college game, which has been so exciting. And I know last week we broke down some of the top 20 guys, and we've got some more top 20 schools for you. So I'll start with Cornell. Stamper, one of the top programs in the country right now. Many people think that they could possibly contend for a title this season. So many great Canadian talents. I'll start with the name Willem Firth, who you know quite well. Other guys on there, Bowie Horsman, Jackson Smart, and then two seniors in Rory Graham and Andrew Dalton, also on that club. What can you say about those guys? I imagine you're going to start with Willem.
Yeah, you got to start with Willem Firth. I mean, he's maybe the top prospect over the next two drafts, and that's really saying something because these are two awesome drafts, right? But I mean, Willem Firth, he just, nobody does it quite like him in the Ontario Junior League. Joyce Felina led the league last year in scoring when you include the playoffs. In the regular season, if you include the points everyone actually got, then Willem Firth led the way. And I do think that those Beach's points are going to be returned to the kids at some point. I think they're going to do the right thing. But anyway, he's amazing. He's so skilled. He's so smart. I mean, I'm not going to compare anyone to Jeff Teat because that's an awfully high bar to set. But, you know, you could if you wanted to, right? Like he's really good.
And also, you know, Willem had told me, I believe it was last summer, that, you know, one of the reasons he decided to go to Cornell was because of Jeff and all he had done there. He's looked up to Jeff, and, you know, so it's interesting that you bring up that comparison. You know, I do want to bring up one guy, and let me actually get up my quote here from Logan Schuss, who is now the head coach of the Delta Islanders, the junior Islanders. Because at Harvard, there is a kid named Jared Masnick, who Logan had high praise for. I'll read the quote directly from you. His name doesn't get brought up enough. He is a complete athlete who has the ability to take over games when he wants to. His size and speed, along with his scoring ability from both inside and outside, makes it extremely hard to defend. 100% future NLL and PLL player in my mind. So huge props for Jared, who is a freshman at Harvard University. So congrats on getting into Harvard. We've seen some Princeton guys like Zach Currier. And I have to say one thing, and I'd love to hear your comment on this, Stamper. When I went to the Harvard website and went to go to the rosters, they have something that a broadcaster like yourself would love. They had the announcer, they had the players pronounce their own name, and you could click the ear and hear it.
So Virginia does that as well. You have, it's like a 5-second clip, right? They say their name and I think they say where they're from, hometown. I absolutely love it. I've been advocating with the NLL to do that for a few years. And I think it might happen, actually, because I think I might have gotten in the right ear to make it happen. Because my thought is, you're doing headshots at the beginning of every season, right? Somebody's there with a camera. I'm pretty sure the camera has video or at least audio. You could just record while you're taking the headshot, take 5 seconds, record them saying their name, make it available. Then you don't have things like, I'm going to cop a mea culpa here and say, when we called Calgary at Ottawa, we pronounced Justin Inacio's name wrong because I couldn't go to shoot around. I asked my color commentator, Jason Tosse, it's his first game. I said, hey, can you go talk to Justin, just make sure we have the name right. And he sent me an email, said, hey, yeah, straight from, I see the name Jay, and it's just like pistachio. So say Inaccio. And I was like, okay, there you go. And then I went after and realized that he talked to Josh Sanderson. You never ask the coach. If you went with the coaches, the league would have kept calling Nick Bielich, Nick Billick. Because Derek Keenan thought, I would talk to Derek Keenan before a game on the bench and said, how do you pronounce number 79's name? He's like, Billick? And I'm like, I don't think so, Jammer. And he said, well, call him over. He's like, he's literally right there. He's like, Blixie, come here. He said, how'd you pronounce your name? And Nick says, Bielich.
Yep.
He's like, what? Come on. So the same, like it's Ignacio, and no shade on Shooter, because coaches often, they're just calling him. I know what they call Justin Ignacio, what his nickname is, but that's usually what they call them.
Yep.
They have enough to deal with without knowing all the pronunciations. So yeah. But anyway, what was the question?
Oh, I was just getting your opinion on the
I love it.
fact that they, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Who's
but
the
yeah,
head coach at Cornell?
Connor Busick.
Yes, that's right. He played for Toronto, right? They brought him in with Schreiber and McCardle, Kieran McCardle. He was the third of those three Americans that came in. Schreiber collected immediately. McCardle took a bit, played fairly well. Busick just didn't catch on, but yeah, terrific player, terrific field player. Didn't quite catch in box, which is another whole thing. It's Vince, Josh. It's Vince. Oh my
God. And so transitioning away from pronunciations,
right.
and Connor, who, by the way, props to Connor also for being one of the head coaches in the NCAA who is really always supporting box, sharing box content, talking about how valuable box lacrosse is. You've seen this increased in a lot of coaches around the NCAA, so that's great to see. So great that Connor's doing that. Moving now on to Georgetown down in the Washington, D.C. area.
Alma mater of Brody Merrill.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got two guys there who are going to be future NLLers who are playing together in Ty Banks and Lucas Dudemain. What can you say about those two? And did I pronounce Dudemain correctly?
Yeah, I think that was really good on Dudemain. He actually played at the Worlds in Utica for, who did he play for? Italy?
I think it was Italy.
I think it was Italy. White jerseys with the blue. Yeah. He was awesome there. He's very good. I mean, yeah, he's got quite a future, but Ty Banks is special. It's funny because Tino Farah, one of our friends who, does a lot of announcing and shows and things, and he calls a ton of BC Junior A games. So I was working on some prospect stuff, and I like to pick the brains of people I respect. So I reached out to Tino and said, "Hey, I'm looking at doing this. I think it was last year when I did my 10 interesting prospects to watch." And I said, I want to have at least one defender. I like this Ty Banks kid. Am I right? And he was like, yes, he is something else. He is a great player. We really saw it last year with the Minto run. I think Banks is a D transition player. So solid, so athletic. I think I'm really high on Banks. You're gonna see, I do have my stories coming out with the intriguing prospects for the next 4 drafts. The first one came out last week. The next one's coming out tomorrow. And when it's time, you're going to see Ty Banks in that list. A little teaser. Spoiler alert: the Ty Banks will be in that group.
Yeah, I mean, and he was solid, if I'm correct, obviously in that Minto Cup run, and obviously with Jack Caskey between the pipes. But that Coquitlam defense with Pat Coyle there behind the bench, I mean, that is as close to a grown man's defense as you can get, at least out in the West Coast. So
Ramo Shinato and Robbie Turpin, they're good. Connor Knock, he's another kid coming up in a couple of years who. Yeah, really, he might be this year. Did he? Yeah, he came out last week in the 25 prospects to watch, right? 2025. Yeah, Connor Knox, really something. One of the and having Pat Coyle coaching your team, that can only help, right? One of the great defenders of all time. He's a great coach.
And just as a kind of a foreshadowing, I mean, I think that this summer again in the juniors, with some of the teams that are being built, whether it's Orangeville or
St. Catharines.
St. Catharines. Coquitlam is going for another run. They are not going to stop trying to build and be successful. I think it's going to be an interesting summer where teams are still considering making a lot of significant moves that we'll be hearing about within the next couple months. Just finally for you, there was an interesting battle, a top 20 battle between UNC, who I know Dan Arestia, one of the leading college analysts in the entire world when it comes to lacrosse. He was saying on his new show with Jonathan Donville that he thinks that UNC is one of the top programs that really need to step up right now, and this is their moment to shine. Ty English is on that team, and they were facing Michigan, who is another top program, and they have a guy who had his best summer in the juniors last year in Nick Rude. Again, correct me on the pronunciation, but and so that was an interesting battle. UNC ended up winning 15-6 in that one. UNC is off to a great start with Dave Petramala, who did also play in the NLL back in the day.
There you go.
And so that was an interesting battle. But what can you just quickly say about those two before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, who was the first one?
Ty English.
Oh, Ty English is really good. I mean, there's a whole bunch of good English players. I think he might be the best of them. Really good D-transition player, right? In box. Is he a midi, I assume, in field?
I believe so, but I'd have to check.
I'd have him as a two-way midi if it was me. But, I mean, just based on his style of play, I think he's awesome. And, he's a very good player. I mean, there's Brooks is also coming along. Obviously, Sam's been drafted. I think they're one of those talented families. And on the other side, in Michigan, Nicholas Rude, you can remember his name because his dad is Bobby Roode, the pro wrestler.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah, very close friends with Tracy Kelusky. So Bobby would be at a bunch of games, and then of course with Nick coming up. Nick Rude is really good. He and DJ Clark, who we talked about last week, they're the two righties about the same age with the junior Lakers, and they are dynamite. They both have another couple of years of junior, I think, at least one more, I think maybe two more, and you really see players, I think, thrive at that point. But Nicholas Rude is a very good young player, solid, smart, physical, very skilled.
And you were right about Ty. He is a midfielder and has even played on some of the defensive units there. So
there you go.
Very spot on. And that is why you do what you do, and you are considered a draft expert. So there you go.
So quick question sorry to interrupt here, but so with that St. Catharines team, isn't that where Chase Cogan's playing? And there's another kid from Onondaga too, right?
Okay, Chase was actually, I think, is with Six Nations with the Arrows.
Oh, okay.
St. Catharines, so they're hosting the Minto Cup this year. So they have really been putting their team together. They had a good team. They've got, the Stainhouse brothers, Ty and the other one, Stainhouse family. They also have Jamison Bucktooth, I think is who you're thinking about. They traded for him. He didn't play last year. He played with the Red Hawks Junior B, and he is really, really good. He was in Orangeville. He's going to play this year in St. Catharines. I was just chatting with him this past week, actually.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. And speaking of that, so where do you guys have Syracuse ranking? Because we have a lot of Syracuse fans with, so many guys from the Utica, Onondaga area.
I have them in upstate New York.
It's central New York, actually, but that's close.
Sorry. Oh.
Yeah. Well, it's so weird, the New York map, because there's nothing really going on in upstate New York other than forest and, camping and stuff like that. So I think that when we talk about livable New York, we always think of Buffalo and Rochester as upstate.
Yeah.
Right? As a New York City guy, I always consider anything out of New York City just whatever is up there. But it's
you think of the rest of it as New York in air quotes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I digress. I say that Syracuse, from what I've seen, and I am far from an expert, but that offense that they have is unbelievable. Joey Spallina is having another incredible year. That kid is something else. It is really special. But there's so many other guys on that offense that are playing so well. The polls have Notre Dame, who's yet to play a game, as number 1. But Syracuse 3-0 now, looking unstoppable offensively.
Sorry, I just got Josh's comment. New York is a part of upstate New York. I win.
And Josh, I guess, is the arbiter of all things. Yep. There. So there we go.
He disagrees with me.
But so Syracuse is going to go deep into the tournament. They're going to be incredibly talented. Excited to, I believe this year's Final Four and finals is in Philadelphia. I will be making my way down for that one as long as the NLL finals is not going on. But I expect the Buffalo Bandits will have already won the championship by then. So
should be good to go.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll free you up for that weekend.
Exactly.
We should wrap this one up because we have another segment of predictions to go. And as usual, we're going a little long, but it's been fun. So we're going to take a quick break. We will be back with our predictions on Inside the World of Box Lacrosse here on Blue Squatch Productions. We'll see you in a minute.
Welcome back again, everybody, to Inside the World of Box Lacrosse, or ITWOBL, as we like to call it. Now it is your favorite portion of the show, I think. This is the Pick'em, where you get to see Stamper and I make fools of ourselves by picking the wrong team. It's always great to make these picks. You can see our records up in the top. I am not proud of mine. Stamper doing a little bit better than me right now. We both want to be picking better, and we've got 8 games on the docket this weekend, so we have a chance to really boost our records. A huge game to start off the weekend. Some incredible Valentine's Day matchups. No love lost between all of these teams. So Stamper, let's go with what might be the game of the weekend in Buffalo versus Toronto.
Yeah.
Who are you picking?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I like to call this segment "Humiliate the Hosts." Which of course is an homage to Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, the great Edward Albee play. They play Embarrass the Guests. But so here's the thing. I have looked over the years, I've followed the teams coming off their buys have had some troubles. Last year, 25 and 26 for teams coming off a bye week. That includes if you include the first week as a bye, if teams don't play until the second week, right? Buffalo last year was 0-3 coming off of buys. Which I found kind of surprising, but they did have some early struggles, right? And teams did a lot of bye weeks early because they, because the schedule is a bit more back weighted. Do you know what Buffalo's record this year is coming off of bye weeks?
I do not know.
3-0.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I'm going to take the Buffalo Bandits because I'm not picking them to lose until they do, and there's no reason because of the bye week to not take them. I think Toronto is desperate. I think Toronto will play great, but I got to go with Buffalo.
Yeah, I think Toronto is, and they'll also be hungry. We talked about it in the recap about how important it is for them to bounce back, especially after a tough loss to San Diego. I'm just trying to bring up some numbers here because it is one of those weekends where Buffalo is playing a back-to-back. And so it's interesting that it's actually, we could be in store to see Buffalo lose one of the games this weekend. And I know I'm kind of diving into their second game as well, but of the 57,
got a long way to go, Adam.
of the 57 times they played 2 games, they've won both games 18 times, split both games 31 times, and lost both 9 times. So a split could be in store here. And I think that split is more likely to happen on the back end for a loss. I'm going to agree with you on this one that Buffalo beats Toronto, although I imagine it's going to be another thriller that we aren't going to want to miss.
Yeah. Only 2 teams have played back-to-backs this year so far. Vancouver had the back-to-back last weekend, lost them both. Philadelphia had a back-to-back, and they lost the first one, then won the second. So, and actually, you go back to last year, and teams lost a lot of back-to-backs, where teams lost both of them, actually. It happened. Calgary, Colorado, Georgia, Panther City, Philadelphia, Saskatchewan all had weekends where they lost both games, which is not the way it's gone in the past. Usually teams have done quite well at least splitting in the games. So as we move on to Saskatchewan and Calgary, the bye week means nothing, as we've determined. Calgary's playing well. I would tend to go with them based on Saskatchewan coming off the bye, but hang on, Greg.
Oh,
I don't know. I think Saskatchewan. I gotta go with Saskatchewan. I just think they're a really solid club, and I think, is Filiano going to play? Probably. I mean, Thomas Kaiser was pretty clear. He's the goalie when they get there. So I'll go with the Rush, but this could be another, the Battle of the Prairies, the Violin Bowl. It could be great.
yeah, you know what? Just to be contrarian, I'm going to go with Calgary. Also, because we've been saying that Calgary isn't it for too long, and I think it's time where I'm going to ride with them until we realize that. And this is a key matchup, right? They're playing a really tough team in Saskatchewan. Like, if they can pull this off, then we really need to start taking them much more seriously.
You were going to ride or die with Saskatchewan, though.
I was, but
I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
No, I mean, me too. But I think that, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me, or what is it? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me once, fool me twice, shame on me.
As George W. Bush said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. Well, you're not going to fool me twice.
Yeah, well, he was surely right on that one, right?
Oh, yeah. He was
but yeah, I am gonna switch it up and say Calgary, just because I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt that I haven't been giving them up to this point. But everything that I've said about Saskatchewan up to this point in the season still holds true. I think they are one of the top teams in this league.
So they're both going to win, is what you're saying. Sorry, I just like to give you a hard time.
That would be great. If Greg could put my name on both teams, I would accept that.
So what about Vancouver and Vegas?
For me, I think it is going to be Vancouver. Vancouver really needs a win. Although it is going to be interesting, and we haven't mentioned it so far this show, kind of a surprising roster move for Las Vegas yesterday in the release of Jacob Rouet. I can see by your reaction right there that you've got some thoughts on that. I'm going to try and reach out to Coach Williams to understand, because this was one of the longest tenured guys on the roster, obviously respected throughout the league. Surprising move.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the roster, the transactions come out every week, and Mike McClellan sends them out. He's awesome with the league. He sends them around, and generally you read them through, and you're like, okay, yeah, this guy's going to the IR, this guy's getting activated, or this guy comes back, so this guy goes to the practice squad. This one, no released and signed to the practice, just released. That's it. And there aren't many shockers on the transaction wire, and this was one. Jacob Rouet, who is yeah, he's such a good two-way player. They had him shift. He was a forward in the prime of his career, and then they had him shift to transition, and I thought he did a good job for them. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, they obviously trying to move forward and change things up again.
Yeah, if only there were some top NLL reporters who could be on the case and figure out what
Let's
happened.
find out.
Let's find out. But yeah, it was interesting to see at least one of the players' reactions. Joel Watson, goaltender there in Las Vegas. He quote tweeted when I had posted that on X/Twitter, and he just simply responded as LOL. So that was his kind of instant hot take.
Also a former Las Vegas Desert Dog, right?
Oh, yes, that's true.
So, yeah. So I not that means anything necessarily. Yeah, I think Vegas has done pretty well. I think they're playing some good games. I would love their logo if they didn't have the little cross sticks there. I think it'd be a really cool logo, but I get why you have the six. But I just don't see Vancouver losing again on this one. So I'm going to go with the Warriors as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I really have always thought, as Joel, I had totally forgot about those goalie moves that they've made, but he's always been one of those guys. And also interesting to note, and we'll get to it towards the end there, but Vegas playing their first back-to-back in franchise history.
Yeah, and Joel Watson is now the GM of the Whitby Warriors in the summer. So
yes, he is.
That's cool. Philly and Halifax, the rematch, 2.0. So, man, Halifax is playing well. I have to think the most likely, even whether it's a back-to-back or a home and home, the most likely scenario, as you mentioned, is the most common scenario is a split, right? Halifax took it to Philadelphia in the running game. They had 9 transition goals. There's no way they get 9 again, right? Philly's got to adjust to that. Halifax had something very specific because they were getting guys down the floor, so far down the floor, so far behind them. They were doing something where guys were just taking off, and Philly's not going to let that happen again. So I think the Wings will pull it out.
Interesting. I'm actually going Halifax with this one.
I hate it because I haven't picked Halifax much, and I think they're really playing well, and now I'm picking against them. But
I'm taking a page out of Preston's books because he has been loving Halifax all season long. He has actually noticed the thunderbolt within the little beard/chin area underneath the beak that he really likes. But I think 4 out of their last 5, they look so impressive. Playing in Halifax has been really great for them. The crowd is awesome there. I think that Philly, these are 2 teams headed in different directions at the moment. And I do feel bad for Nick DeMute. I think that, I was a little, I feel like I've maybe been a little bit harsh on him and, his performance, even though I haven't really been, negative about it, but I feel like, when you look at it, it's becoming a situation again that was very similar to Zach Higgins being there, where he's just facing so many shots. The amount of saves that he's making up there in the tops of the league in saves per game. So it's not like he isn't doing that, poorly. It's more that, he's just facing a tremendous amount of shots in goal there. Anyway, I'm going Halifax.
We need to move on because Greg's putting our names up for the next game. I will say I'm waffling like crazy because I feel like Halifax, but last time I switched, it was when I picked Rochester, and you're all like, why would you take Rochester? They're not playing well, and they won by a mile. That might have actually been against Halifax. So I'm not going to switch. I'm going to stick with my first pick, and I'm probably going to regret it. But anyway, Ottawa and Albany. Rich Lisk, of course, used to be with that club, and that's going to be a friendly rivalry. And that is a tough one. Albany's got to win some games, right? I'm going to go Albany.
Yep. I mean, it will be interesting. There's a lot of defensive challenges for Albany, the injuries they're going through. And maybe that's just what the doctor ordered in terms of the offense that has been missing for the Black Bears. However, I am going to go Albany because until the offense of the Black Bears really starts going, I'm going to say that Doug Jamieson is going to, step up, and that the Albany Firewolves in front of their home fans are going to take that win.
Or Andrew Kidd gets his first win. I mean, you did a nice story about him. He's a good young goaltender, but no, it'll be Dougie Jamieson. Okay, you get to pick first for San Diego at Buffalo in the second half of the weekend for Buffalo.
Yeah, well, you know what? Just to stir up some controversy and piss the Buffalo fans off, and I'm gonna go San Diego with this one. I did just read off the data that shows that they often do split when they play 2 games in a weekend. So it does show that and it's difficult, right? Like, I mean, obviously, when you're playing in Toronto and Buffalo, it's not like the travel is crazy. Although there is going to be some snow and some bad weather. Is that going to impact a bus ride or whatever? But San Diego, I think, is really due for a big game, and this is their time to show that they are the team that they expected themselves to be, and that a lot of us thought that they would be. I think that they're going to catch Buffalo maybe a little flat-footed and steal a win there in Bandit Land.
The San Diego guys are going to show up in flip-flops and T-shirts and be just flabbergasted by the snow, and they are going to be beaten by the Buffalo Bandits because they were unprepared. I had a rowing friend who moved out to Victoria from St. Catharines, came out in January to go to school at UVic and row with us, and he came out with basically shorts and shirts and stuff, and I was like, idiot. I know it's not winter, but it does get cold in Victoria.
What do you guys call yourselves, you being Canadians who travel to warm weather in the winter?
Snowbirds?
Yeah. So it's a lot of snowbirds on that San Diego club.
Yeah. I'm kidding. Obviously, they're not actually based in San Diego. Yeah, the snowbird thing is slowing down. There's some hesitancy, I think, for Canadians to go to the U.S. right now. We won't get into that too much.
All of our that's where we call all the old people that retire out of New York State and go live in Florida because they go live there half the year, and then as soon as it warms up here, they come up for like 3 months and then go back.
Yeah.
You
Just
mean
under half the year, right? Oh, I guess for you guys, it doesn't matter. In Canada, you have to spend at least 1 day more than half the year in Canada to retain everything.
Greg, were you talking about that floating abyss above New York City?
Yes, the floating abyss above New York City that doesn't start till just above Poughkeepsie if you take Josh's definition of it.
Yeah.
What about
Poughkeepsie
Schenectady?
town,
That's one of
by
my favorite towns. Just
love
the name.
You've
the
obviously
Hudson.
never been there.
I have not. I just like the name.
I'll leave it at that. But so the Nighthawks, I got to ask,
Yep.
Hartley's back now. He's playing again. Is that what they really needed? And also, I mean, did anybody? I think Hutchcraft played way better this season than I expected him to when he came up.
Yeah, 100%. He was great. I've been, very high on Hutchcraft for a long time, and he proved himself. And I know it was a little bit of a startling shift to just throw Hartley into the net right away, not even giving Hutchcraft a chance. But as I've mentioned previously on this show, Hutchcraft was always going to be the big team guy. And when Hartley was ready, this is how it was going to go. Hartley definitely made the athletic saves that Hutchcraft admittedly knows that, that's not his forte. And so I think those were key saves for him. It's interesting, and I'm really contradicting myself a bit when I look at this matchup because I think that Saskatchewan is going to win this game. So on the second game of a back-to-back, I do think that they pull this one off. But, again, just as with Buffalo and just as with Las Vegas, a significant weekend for a team that is really trying to establish themselves at the top of the list of the NLL best teams.
I'm going to say, because teams coming off buys, I think I mentioned that coming off buys this year are 17-10. They've actually done very well on the after the bye weeks, and teams doing doubleheader weekends still tending to split even more so than usual. And there's more time for Hartley to get back into game shape to get ready to go because he'll have the practice. And because he wasn't great last week, but we know he's a very good goalie. He just, it's tough the first one back. So I'll take the Nighthawks.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be a great matchup. And then finally, we've got Las Vegas at Calgary. And actually, I didn't realize that Calgary also playing two games this weekend. You know what?
I mean, think they just don't like the Calgary Wives? I mean, why would they do this on Valentine's Day weekend? Most of these guys have full-time jobs. They play this, and then they're like, hey, Valentine's Day, we're going to rip you away again.
Yeah, I mean,
that's exactly it.
This is what it means to be a professional athlete, right? So, you celebrate early. I know Nikki and I are celebrating tomorrow on the 13th instead of on Valentine's Day. And so, you make adjustments as you go. But yeah, so I guess when I look at it now, I'm picking Calgary to win both games this weekend and say to the league, hey, we're here. We're meant to be at the top of this list. So I guess that's how it unfolds.
Yeah, I've got Calgary because I'm not going to pick them to lose both. But that means I'm picking Vegas to lose both, which, I mean, you got to do one or the other, right? There's a bunch of teams playing doubleheaders this weekend. I'll take the Roughnecks because I do think they're playing very well. And you and Nikki celebrate a lot of things, right? So you get used to adjusting to things. I love it. I think it's great. But yeah, you do a lot of celebrations.
You gotta keep things exciting and fresh. Celebrating first dates, things like that. We still remember. Actually, that was back in January when we had our very first date 6 years ago. Kinds of celebrations. It's anytime you can make an excuse to celebrate is, I think, a good time.
Terry and I celebrate basically the Man Cup is our anniversary. we got back together. We dated before, and then we were apart for a while. But we got back together when I was out at the Man Cup in Victoria, and she was living there, and we spent the week together, and it was awesome. And we've been together ever since. And it's just the light of my life, and I am so excited to spend another Valentine's Day with her, even though I'm not a big Valentine's guy. But then we got married. So that that's September. Then we got married October 30th. So that's our other anniversary. Yeah, those are our two key ones. Plus, we have our dog Millie came to us on October 30th or 29th as well. The year before we got married. So that's her adoptiversary. So we kind of folded everything into the fall there.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, see, you make special exceptions.
Exactly.
Well, and for you, Stamper, that's kind of when your summer wraps up. You kind of celebrate the end, probably get to take a little bit of time off and enjoy her again because, I mean, that you are everywhere on the road, just like us. I mean, we spend so much time traveling. It's like Adam in the winter as he's going from all these games.
Mhm.
That's more of my summer thing. So kudos to
for
the
sure.
wives that
Yeah.
can tolerate us being gone all the time.
Canadian box lacrosse folks tend to get married in October. That's just how it goes.
Yeah.
Seriously, ask a whole bunch of them when their anniversaries are, and you'll find probably 70% are October.
Yep, it's true. Who was it this past Blaze Reardon just got married. Although I have to say, who was it? Dane Smith and Josh Byrne got
In the
married
summer.
over the summer in between, though, the PLL
Yes.
season.
Yes, and they had to miss the Josh had to miss. Did they both miss the tryout for Team Canada? I think Josh Byrne did because he was off already, getting ready to get married. Dane, I think, was at the tryout and then went and joined it because obviously they're best buddies. They were in each other's wedding parties. But yeah, that was. But that again, those were booked before that tryout camp for Team Canada was made. So I think Josh Byrne was a pretty solid bet to make that team anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, I talked to the coaches. He was.
So I think that's gonna
That's
do
it.
it.
Yeah, and we're almost in an hour. It's pretty close.
So
That's why I said almost, Greg.
Yeah, 2 minutes over an hour, but I do have to say I'm going to end this with a couple. Josh asks every week about the replays. How do you guys feel? Is it starting to slow the game down? Is it too many? I know we touched on it with the cross check there, the hi hats and the majors, and I agree. I really like that rule where they err on the side of call it a major. We can take it back to a minor. But some of these goals, I guess, is what he's talking about, where it seems like it takes forever. How do you feel it's affecting the pace of play?
It's not too many, but they're too long.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
more,
they are.
especially when you say it's got to be conclusive. If you don't know within 2 minutes, then it's not conclusive.
Right, and I think that is part of my one of my downs in my 3 up 3 down this week is that I think we're at a point where the NLL can spend a little bit more on trying to enhance the amount of video angles, the cameras that they're doing, so we can help the refs out. Like this is not a fault of the refs. I mean, they can train as much as they can, but if they don't have the angles to review and it's not set up properly, that's just how it is.
I mean, you were looking at the Holden Katoni goal that got called off, that hit the crossbar and was pretty clearly in. But again, you don't have the dead overhead. But the other one I thought was the Rezateritz goal at the other end. That was Michael Sauer's first assist, right? And the ball, Warren Hill catches it in his stick, but the stick's behind the line probably. I mean, again, you look at it and you think it's probably in, but it was a little hard to tell if it was in. So I don't know how you could really change it. And that was one where it wasn't a challenge. It was the two officials had it different. So and that's one thing people sometimes wonder, well, what if they have different calls? What is it? It's the head official. His call stands if they can't come up with something conclusive. The cross check thing, it's if it's straight to the head, that's a major for the most part. Like so you were saying, if it hits in the shoulder and rides up, that's generally going to be a minor. You can't make contact directly to the head. That's a big no.
Awesome. So that's basically our fan questions. Thanks, guys, for answering them. Thanks for all the channel members who are out there. We've had about 5 of them watching this whole show, so we appreciate every one of them. And thank you guys so much for taking the time. And hopefully we'll get some highlights. We were talking off air, try to get some college highlights for next week and kind of do some highlights for that segment next week. So appreciate everybody spending their time with us.
Thanks, gang.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, and happy Valentine's Day to all the viewers who are going to watch this, whether it's live or otherwise, and enjoy it with your family and your loved ones. It's going to be an exciting week of boxing. Can't wait for it.
Yeah, celebrate however you celebrate and just share the love with all the people in your world. Thanks, everyone. That will do it for Inside the World of Box Lacrosse this week. For Blue Squash Productions on YouTube for Greg Beecher, Adam Levy, I'm Steven Stamp. Thanks so much for being with us, and we'll see you soon.